Oh, my elevator music, where have you been? Where have I been? Folks, I've been knocking on death's door. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of surprising myself in showing up today. Things have been so rough, but then again, that's just ramping up the sense of urgency regarding all our health, how important that is. But I digress. Let me verify the stream. And we're just not going to mess around and kick things off. I got things to do, as we all do. So I'm going to do my best to just really dive into the information, not mess about. All right. Seems as though we're good. I just don't know how well my connection is up here. Welcome to a muzzle chat. Well, there's one way to find out regarding the connection. So good day. I truly hope today's information dump only strengthens us all to face the reality of the world we're living in, folks. It's so important. Let's take a look. I got quite a bit of information screen share, so bear with me in this kind of pre-monologue, going through some of it. I just have to take this moment in time to share some of this information. Folks, we cannot ignore this elephant in the room any longer. Our health is freaking everything. I can't even bear the thought of losing more of our health across the board. We've recently gone over the deterioration in this very country. We are the unhealthiest country the world has ever known in comparison to any other country living today. I mean, for frick's sakes, just the sheer amount of births versus our die-off, we're not even keeping up with our own population numbers as it stands. That in and of itself tells us all we need to know. And this, going over this information, frankly, is just hitting so close to home. Too close to home, in fact. So yes, I had another insane hit on my health. So God, give me the ability to share this information today, but not to fuel doom and gloom. Folks, we must. The reality of just the reality we're living in. What is this great disconnect? This sheer lack of understanding only goes so far with propaganda and warfare. Controlling information, yes, it's incredibly powerful, but it has its limitations. Denial only explains so much as well as fear only explains so much. Our deteriorated state of health as well only goes so far, which has me researching more and more Bible. This is a spiritual battle at the root of it. So as I learn more, I actually am learning more about demonic strongholds, how the devil here actually works, its methods of witchcraft, and how it literally has the masses under demonic spells. Yes. More on this futuristically. We're going to connect the dots to Kingdom Come on this, and we're literally watching it play out. And let me touch on some of the facts, because now if we couple that demonic and spiritual aspect to everything else we covered regarding denial and fear only going so far, controlling information going so far, when we couple it, boom, now we're onto something. Now we're actually facing a reality we can more so cut through those deceptive layers and bring in more ability to facing the reality. When we face it, there only is the only way, foundational work to actually shift things for the better. But I digress. We must break all those demonic strongholds within ourselves, our country. But let's not dive into that any further. Back to the geared up information for today. Can we ask ourselves briefly, let me actually cancel this tunage. Can we ask ourselves, can we deeply ponder just for a moment, if any presidential figure, administration, and this is where on this singular topic alone, and there's, hey, some it's financial, some it's war through the warmongering, some it's through the pedophilic ties to everything. Everyone's kind of got whatever's hitting closest home to them to see clearly, and all of it is praiseworthy when we're really breaking those strongholds and seeing it for what it really is and not falling prey to the deceptive measures. I personally feel there's no stronger path than through health itself, because once again, that is the most suppressed information I've experienced on trying to peddle and pump out there. Real studies, real information, real doctors, and why are they getting doxxed? So that becomes incredibly telling in and of itself. But if any administration, and it's bigger than this, and this is why I step away entirely of the constructs of, it's a division method of even humoring left versus right as though it's a choice. That, by its very essence, is a divisive tactic to strip a body of people, the majority of people, by its rulers itself. That is how it's being utilized as a divisive tactic, and it's too effective. It's trying to literally split the country's people right down the middle to our detriment. So it's bigger than that, and we're not to fall prey to that anymore. But once again, the proof is in the pudding. If they truly cared about us, like really cared, wouldn't they address the fluoride being put in our water? This is tied to literally dumbing us down. And folks, this isn't up for debate. Fluoride, fact, makes us dumber, neurologically impaired. Full stop. And then wouldn't they address all the other toxins in our water? The pharmaceuticals? Oh yes, there's pharmaceuticals such as birth control. Think about it. Why is men's testosterone tanking in this country? Could it be these hormonal, impactful pharmaceutical drugs that is known to leach in our water, but could they even be putting it there? But I digress. What does that matter? The point it's showing it, and it's there, and it's in most of our supplies. What are we doing to eradicate that? Not much. What is this administration doing to eradicate that? Yes, there's other pharmaceuticals as well. We won't dive into it. Also, heavy metals and much, much more. Essentially toxins that are deteriorating our health. Now let's move on to another pillar. Wouldn't they be addressing our food and the toxic fillers and everything, pesticides, GMOs, things of that nature that don't belong in our food, that are more so toxic filler than actually nourishing and meeting what we should be labeling food as food, right? It's not food, it's toxic filler. The point, it isn't that nourishingly impacting and diminishing. But I digress. Not just that aspect regarding a food. Why are they allowing Bill Gates characters and other countries such as China to buy up all this farmland in our country? essentially cornering the market entirely and enabling them to put all these insane regulations on the vast majority of our food in this country, not to mention lab-grown meats, how they're even putting mRNA tech and vaccinations in lettuce, tomatoes, tobacco products, vaccinating literally all of our food, from chicken, beef, pork. It's being done, and they want to roll it out and speed it up. Step into another pillar regarding our societal infrastructure and the impacts of our health. Wouldn't they address and audit the whole Internet of Things and how it has been negatively impacting our minds and bodies? How many of us are completely out of the loop in that topic? How many are truly living under utter denial regarding that topic? The data is overwhelming, and it's there. And we're going to expose, God willing, and I gain the ability, this last health scare, strip that from me entirely. Basic functions, everything. And it was scary, folks. Very scary. And I don't wish that for you. And we got to rein things in. Wouldn't they address stepping out of that one, our largest criminal organizations known as vaccine companies and pharmaceutical companies? Let me ask you this. How would you even define a criminal organization? Now, we know law and order is deeply corrupted, but even with that corruption, wouldn't one of the staples of these companies, at the point they're tried in a court of law and they get hit with criminal activity, wouldn't that be one of the staples? Wouldn't another be ones who have actually paid out some of the largest criminal settlements throughout history? Wouldn't that be one of the staples that we would utilize to even acknowledge in how we would define a criminal organization? They couldn't even skirt our own law and order of the land, as corrupt as that has even been. What does this tell us? Because the largest companies and organizations, such as Bayer, Pfizer, Moderna, all these companies have in fact been just, yes, they those two staples, those two markers that we would even utilize, they have been tried in courts for criminal activity. They have to date, as far as we know in human record, paid out the largest criminal settlements throughout history. Is this just in one ear out the other? Where to absorb? Let's really ponder this. If this administration was truly Team Humanity, Team America, Team God, wouldn't they abolish the vaccine immunity that still exists today at a bare minimum in those select industries? And this administration at a bare minimum isn't addressing that? Wouldn't they actually follow the other 190 plus countries that do not allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise at all? Why are we not following suit of the majority of the way the world works? But yet, RFK, this administration's following the one other example, and literally trying to wrap some type of pretty bow as though they care about us, making them list all the adverse effects in their commercials, knowing damn well their own data does not support the actual truth or proper consent. As though that's a hiccup to them advertising, because we are actually cutting deals with them, giving them plenty of money and the ability to advertise with this new deal irregardless. Truly unbelievable. I tell you what they wouldn't be doing. They wouldn't be praising criminal enterprises. They would not be funding them. They would not be whining and dining them or even meeting with them at all, full stop. They'd be exposing them. They would not continually tout warp speed, continually gaslighting the masses. And they would not be scrambling to censor, completely abolishing messages just like this. This is why we must do better at organizing. We must do better at supporting free speech platforms. It's like, do we even value freedom? What are we doing? We cannot even practice freedom on these controlled platforms. Think about it. Who are we kidding with that practice? Ourselves. Wow. We must do better at supporting truth seeking. A message. Maybe someone's giving me a heads up. I sure hope it's not glitching too much, folks. I apologize. I might have to move the Starlink out here. Where was I? Yeah, it's... What are we doing? We cannot even practice... Yeah, who are we kidding ourselves? Or ourselves. We must do better, once again, at supporting truth seekers, to giving them a fighting chance. Because there is tyrannical algorithmic suppression, censoring, shadow banning, doxing. I've lost so many accounts, folks. So many strikes on YouTube. So many limitations. Yet the YouTube still holds the vast majority, I rest my case, the vast majority of the mass population versus Rumble. Rumble's already showing levels of tyrannical suppression. We haven't learned. We don't value freedom enough to even absorb. It's interesting. I know it's tough and this can be triggering, but once again, we must face the reality of our situations. Because the fact of the matter is now they are taking away our ability to even consent to, it's not even vaccinations. Vaccination is a fake word in and of itself. As you look at the real data, the said substance under that label, even on its levels of protection, you could take any one of them, from the childhood and thereafter, any one of them on the said thing it's supposed to give immunity and a level of protection. Fact, it increases the likelihood of the said protection and more like threat to your mortality and other adverse effects. I'd argue intended outcomes and consequences of getting this bioweapon shot. Every single one of them. We could pull up, and we have pulled it all up before. But let me ask you, are we really surprised that they're taking away our ability to even consent through the aerosolization of said things after a fake planned scamdemic that we did not properly address in any way, shape, or form? What else did we expect, folks? enough from me. Let's go through some of the information queued up for today. Yes, vaccines are now being airdropped, recorded in 6 different states. Never going to grow tired of this clip, folks. Once again, what is their agenda? Folks, it's not just control over utter control, and this is demonic at nature. It's a population control measure. Warp speed killed millions upon millions of us. And we're scrambling to gather the data, but the infertility rates have plummeted directly in correlation to the release of the said shots, that it has been entirely devastating, not just to those that are living, but the reproduction rates in and of itself. What better methods to world pop? And here is none other than Bill Gates in the TED Talk talking about world population, how it's an issue, and this dates way back, 2007, I believe. So let's play this and let's go through the more current information.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Well, common sense would tell you, if you have a man standing in front of you saying he's going to reduce the world's population by 10 or 15% using vaccines, what does that mean to you? It means somebody's going to die because you put a vaccine in them. It doesn't mean you're going to save people.
Right.
That's pretty much common sense in my brain. But yet I saw him say it. He said it.
We all have at this point, and this is where I believe it truly is demonic, witchcraft, spellbound, things of that nature. And when you look at all the projections, how I believe they gain more momentum and a deeper stronghold, whether it's a deal with the devil or the devil has that type of arrangement with God himself, I don't know, but it seems more so with the deal of the devil, you gain more momentum over selling your soul for mortal gain. There's different levels to it. I'm not a part of those, and I never would be. Freemasons, Illuminati, all the rituals that they do demonically, you could see it to an extent through Hollywood, all these other measures. We're going to dive into this futuristically, folks, but it is clear as day, all the satanic symbolism. So there's a level to even Bill Gates characters and making a presentation such as that, putting it out in the public sphere, that somehow it's like we're hearing it, but we're not hearing it. We're not absorbing it. It's like in one ear out the other. That is part of the demonic impact of, my gosh, but here he is. We're not fully hearing what they're even saying. And we must break these chains, these bonds, to fully come into grasp with the reality we're living in. It's multiple. I've caught 4 accounts now. This new administration, this term alone, sitting with, this was just the other night, folks. Bill Gates meets with Trump yet again and had a dinner, and they discussed gene editing. How will MAGA defend this? How will Maha defend this? The writing is on the wall. How can you excuse this man, this administration, and have the Trump dementia, whatever you want to call it, syndrome, idol worship syndrome, and excuse him through the genocide, through the Epstein cover-up, through warp speed, all of this, folks, versus facing reality. I'd venture to say there's a demonic stronghold, and it manifests and makes itself entirely present when we try bringing it up to a loved one and they don't have ears to hear. In fact, the extreme response they have in bringing up this type of information and just shut down. A lot of people will tune out and can't even hear and absorb or even consider what the facts we're laying out. Like, look at the reaction with Trump and this man. It's as though Trump idolizes him. Look at how he giggles like a little boy.
Second phase of my career, giving away all the wonderful money that Satya's good work has helped
Look at that smirk. Come on.
multiply a lot. But I think the thing that ties my first career that I still spend some time on because AI is so phenomenal and my
Phenomenal and impacting all of us to our detriment. Unbelievable.
second career is innovation, innovating in health in areas like vaccine.
Oh, it's disgusting. All I see is demonic right there. Every individual selling their souls to our detriment. This man may even put it in terms better than I can at the moment. Let's go ahead. I don't know why X is glitching out like that. Let's play this one. This one's very powerful.
Uh-oh, folks. Bill Gates is in the White House again talking to Trump, and I'm going to tell you why that actually matters. So according to reports, Bill Gates met with Trump at the White House to talk about the importance of U.S. global health programs and research. And Gates said they had quite an intriguing dinner. Now, most people would say, well, it's just a meeting. It doesn't really mean anything until you see the evidence of what happened when they met in Trump's first term. Similar thing, the press reported on it, and Bill Gates said Trump is super interested in a universal flu vaccine. This was in 2018. He also said that Trump offered him a White House position, which he declined. And I've never seen a single journalist ask the question to Trump, did you try to hire Bill Gates to the White House? Because if a journalist and a reporter actually asked that question, it would break the fake left-right paradigm, which they designed to keep you running in circles like animals. But anyway, did this meeting go nowhere? Well, it doesn't really seem like it, because 6 months before the lockdown in 2019 September, Donald Trump passed an executive order modernizing influenza vaccines in the United States to promote national security and public health. If you read the executive order, it establishes a national influenza vaccine task force. Remember the name task force during the lockdown? It said that the order direct actions to reduce the United States reliance on egg-based influenza vaccine production, to expand domestic capacity of alternative methods that allow more agile and rapid responses to emerging viruses. And it brought together the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Veteran Affairs, the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the CDC, the NIH, and gave them powers to expand it even further. So when Trump recently said that Operation Warp Speed was a huge success and it was basically a military operation, isn't it interesting that similar language was in a 2019 executive order that just so happened to match what Bill Gates said they talked about in a 2018 meeting? But unfortunately, on the right, we don't have a lot of journalists and news analysts. We have a lot of professional butt sniffers, coattail riders, and desperate man babies who would probably lick dirt off Donald Trump's shoes in order to get an invite to a Mar-a-Lago Christmas meeting. So while Trump is meeting with Bill Gates, he's posting stuff like this on his Instagram. Trump was right about everything in order to brainwash his base into complete submission. It's hard to talk about this stuff because people on the left who hate Trump, they haven't made sense in 10 years and they don't seem to do any actual good reporting. They just cry and make weird talking points. And then on the right, it seems like there's millions of people who think that he's actually fixing and saving the country, when in reality, although he is doing some good stuff, he's constantly showing his true colors as a false opposition Judas goat who nobody on his side ever challenges with any sort of meaningful reporting. Now, a lot of people will point to the connections that Bill Gates and Donald Trump have to Jeffrey Epstein, but
boom, there we go. That demonic tie, that very connection. I'm telling you, folks, we're on to something. That denial only goes so far. The fear porn only goes so far. The propaganda and controlling information only goes so far. How is it people will pop in and then just abruptly, and act like a man-child, an adult, female, male? It only goes so far. There are demonic strongholds. We are talking about deals with the devil and the devil's sphere of influence. Once again, when a family member just tries, when your intent is just action just becomes so intense, so literally demonic presence. It's eluding, it's connecting us into something deeper. And we'll go through futuristically some of these deeper rituals and bring some of the receipts and evidence that's right there in our face, from the Statue of Liberty, from a lot of the political buildings and Capitol buildings, and the way the city's built out, where it ties into the Freemasonry, Masons, the Illuminati, essentially even Judaism, all tying to demonic ritual, spiritual symbolism. It is deep, and it's right there in front of our face. And you can't chalk it as the CIA's conspiratorial think, like you can only have so much coincidence. Now, I know some people will stretch some of the truths a little far on the matter, but it is right there in our face, folks. Let's just continue with this message. Nope, they didn't arrest him. We are whining. They are whining and dying them on our behalf. I believe there's a lot of spiritual disconnect and not facing the reality of the world around us, because there are connections and ties. We're enabling it. A lot of people don't even understand their own income tax is unconstitutional, and it's criminal, and it's voluntary. That 99% of us are voluntarily paying it as though it's patriotic. No, the patriotic, dang it. The patriotic thing to do is acknowledge the depth of the corruption and not voluntarily pay this criminal organization that was stood up in 1913. We haven't been a free nation for some times, folks. I mean, here he is praising this criminal organization.
And I was honored to have Albert
Unbelievable.
Be the first. He's done a fantastic job with, as you know, with the COVID. He did a fantastic job with a lot of things. He's a leader, and Pfizer is right at the top. You know, it's there. Eli Lilly has been fantastic also, your friend, my friend. And they're all coming in over the next week. We're making deals with all of them. And I'm curious.
Praising criminal organizations, making deals, and this particular one funneling $70 billion. Folks, we can't even keep up with the die-off and the negative impacts of the COVID era, or in my case, Lyme disease dating back to the 50s. Okay? You funnel $70 billion into this corrupt criminal organization. You strike deals with AstraZeneca in the tune of $50 billion. What does that say to the masses if we don't collectively pull our heads out of you-know-where, effectively organize, and even promote? If I'm not your flavor I gotta move this Starlink. I apologize. You just don't know till you give it a go. Support Dr. McCullough, Dr. Artist, the Health Ranger over at Brighteon, but Mike Adams, Dr. Jane Ruby. The list is endless. We must gain more organization and more momentum, because the fact of the matter is, even if we gathered millions upon millions upon millions, we're talking about billions here, folks, that we're up against. They already have all these bioweapons labs hidden right here in our own country, such as Fort Detrick and many others, and others across overseas. There were multiple that Vladimir was directly targeting, seemed very strategic right there in Ukraine, that we were funding right here, multiple that we admitted to. It's under oath. It's no secret, but a lot of individuals, too many, aren't informed because, once again, we are on the platforms where they're going to suppress this information, definitely not pedestal it. So the importance of being free in our minds, in our bodies, in our country are in fact transitioning to places we can, in fact, practice that freedom. YouTube, in comparison to Rumble, no comparison. YouTube is entirely oppressive versus Rumble. And if we as a people understood and valued our freedoms, all the content creators would simply dupe over all their information to Rumble, irrelevant whether the experience is the same or not. It would seemingly overnight, it would be the platform. Frick YouTube. But we as a masses, like, we haven't gotten it yet. And how far must it get? And when we're talking about our health and our ability to even connect the dots neurologically, physically, mentally, all they need is time. With this amount of money, this amount of funds, and this now tactic of literally dropping vaccinations in our airspace, there's consent's out the window. That is a red line we should not tolerate as a people. And I'm sitting here trying to sound the alarm, not for doom and gloom, to up the organization to say hell no and put a stop to it. How do we do this? Well, I believe through platforms like this, getting the information out, help me find the direct solutions even beyond that. Come talk on a muzzle chat. Email me at muzzlechat@gmail.com. If we don't maintain a level of our freedom of speech and our health, and they go hand in hand, then essentially we are choosing to suffer more than we already are, to give over our everything to demonic entities more so than showing up as Christians and supporting our God, which is everything free agency. So let's just be excited to do our part and not be all demoralized. And at the point, this is like, whoa, you want to throw your hands up in the air. And I had a lot of discussions with individuals that have had major breakthroughs because enough is enough with the Epstein, all these other things, right? They had to gain this power position of power, what have you, for us to, what a blessing, what a gift to now see that, hey, you know what? It is beyond the construct of left versus right. And we, at the end of the day, hold all the cards as a collective, as one people. Now it makes sense as to all this divisive, tactics. Now, don't get me wrong. I get it. A lot of them loons, whatever, that there's a lot that are too far gone. We can't expect everyone to like kumbaya, find the commonalities and really move the ball. That's fine. Let the loons be loons. We're a land of law and order. Let's embolden the law to face, any extremists that may show up on any side, right? But through the law, we can't let that be any worse than it's already been and go after hate speech, infringing on our own freedom of speech, right? There is no free speech without hate speech, for example. So we must be constitutionally based. That's why I stay away from all the labeling. I have yet to find discrepancies in the Constitution that I wouldn't bleed, stand for, die for, full stop. But even conservative at this point, like that label, it's deceptive. What are we even conserving? You conserving my body, my choice, LGB, men dressing as women? Unbelievable. That whole circus. All right, back to the health, sounding the alarm on health. I could go on tangents. Apparently I needed this release. this Patriot Voice just followed him. And as you find information from amazing individuals, I mean, you never know. This gentleman you may find more impressive than that fantastic. Go. All the links are right down below. Well, here we are, 2025. A proud father of vaccine. Donald Trump is still praising DARPA's Operation Warp Speed mass depopulation agenda. Full stop. That you cannot explain it any other way. It is a bioweapon, and in the patents that make up its own context actually say just that. Bioweapon. Okay, we heard. Yeah.
You were the driving force behind. Entire medical community, and with you, what is going on?
Research on what?
Into mRNA vaccines.
Well, we're going to look at that. We're talking about it, and they're doing a very good job. And that is a pass. With Operation Warp Speed was, whether you're Republican or Democrat, considered one of the most incredible things ever done in this country. The efficiency.
We are neither. We must get that into our head. At the point you run under those foolish labels at this point, you are entirely wrapped up into the psyop and the restraints, the constraints, the box to our own detriment. It literally is two faces to the same coin. Through different tactics and illusion, as though we're going to move the needle on this, we're going to move the needle on this. They're serving the same slave master. Who owns the coin? There's clearly an owner to the coin. And we start diverting our energy against that, then we can stop funding everything to our own demise. We could free ourselves of our monopoly money, a fake fiat currency. We actually could bring the mortgagers to the table. We gain a seat as a people and be rid of interest rates. And that goes for mortgages, that goes for credit cards, loans. We can come up with fair ways of them being able to exist and provide what have you. But once we even address the income tax and being taxed to oblivion, we could change the economy, the whole world economy right here, especially in our own country, to where we have more abundance, more economic opportunity, more like equal distribution to the efforts, our skills, our trades, our work, to even minimize the need for loans to begin with. As families, we could actually create generational wealth, but there's got to be a shift. There is a new world order. It's no secret. There is an Agenda 2030. It's no secret. And when you read through it in the World Economic Forum, they're literally taking us further down the path of where it's harder than ever before to own property, acquire generational wealth. And we're enabling that. We're allowing that. It blows my mind. So once again, not to get too deep into the weeds, we must free ourselves. And this is where I'm grateful for the Lyme disease. Yes, it still poses challenges. It is a pain in my ass bioweapon. Surprise, surprise. Really, really hard to get to the root and entirely eradicate. However, I believe I've freed a lot of those demonic strongholds through addressing the mold toxicity. Even, what's the other one? Like mold yeast. Because there's a healthy balance within the body, and some molds should be eradicated entirely. And that impacts everything from gut function, organ function, hormonal function, neurological function. So through all those cleanses, it has set me free in a huge sense. And I believe I'm seeing it in ways. It's the only way you could even gain the proper discernment and be able to come to terms with a lot of this. The hormonal imbalances through nutrition and other toxins such as metals, forever chemicals. Well, surprise, surprise, Masterpiece, one of the sponsors, give that a plug, because that has been one of the instrumental means for me to eradicate the heavy metals, but also a lot of the forever chemicals. Hey, guess what? They're good news. They're not so much forever chemicals. It's eradicating a lot of that from the body. Now, I believe health services, once again, and we need to build out a whole new entrusted infrastructure that abolishes the insurance corruption layer and everything, and get to the root of health, real health, flourishing in this country. Well, that can't be done under the confines of how corrupt our health systems have in fact become, selling their souls, essentially, knowing it or not, to pharmaceuticals with the incentivations and things like that, from even administering vaccinations and catering their clients and their people in the most place of need to, for example, like cancer. My gosh, they're not incentivized. They've worked on that for over a century. They've made no breakthroughs, and any doctors that have made breakthroughs have been suicided. Their licensures have been stripped. It tells us all we need to know. So we got to create the proper shift at the end of the day. We just need better function, better health. But we've shifted, the whole industry shifted more so into viruses, bacterial, than, and I believe we're getting more so to the root of a lot of our issues than parasitical. How was it when it had, through my own experience during the scam pandemic, and there were waves of whatever happening. I don't call it COVID. I believe that's keeping us from getting to the root of the issue, right? There were other things that were stood up, venoms, 5G, just to list a couple, that I believe attributed to these new symptoms. But irregardless, the cold and flu didn't disappear during that time span. But you know what minimized all those symptoms and knocked all of it right out? Ivermectin. So what's an antiparasitical, for example, becoming so effective eradicating cold and flu symptoms as well? Could the root of that actually be parasitical as well? Well, a lot of our medical doctrine and books and historical records regarding medicine and health are more parasitically based than this new age virus, bacteria type think. So I believe a lot of that has deceptively kept us more so on this annual illness and level of deteriorated state. Why is that not a part of our health in general in this country? Why is that not part of our education in this country? I know there's more to it. Uh-oh. Did I lose power? Hang on one second. Are you guys still with me? Was that rant just too long? I'm having a power issue here. Let me see if the stream's still authentic way of going about information. And I suppose this hiccup is none other than proof of just that. I sure hope there isn't another hiccup. Looks like we're back up. Unbelievable. But that's probably telling me something. My rant is getting a little too long. Dang. 1 second. Get to see my dirty jeans. I actually need to get out there working, but I don't know if maybe the fridge, because, and this is total side note, and I apologize, I got to use another power source. One moment. I'm going to run a cord. Unbelievable. I apologize. It's what you get being off grid, moving power. One of my inverters looks as though it's totally conked out. I don't know if the studio was drawn too much. Fridge was trying to kick on. It wasn't a problem before. It may have just kicked the bucket, so to speak. But I digress. Now I'm warming here, all that movement real quick and the nerves. But let's get back on topic. I just want to touch on the whole reason for me to really dive into all of this is because I myself have been suffering and struggling, and I want to minimize the chances of you having to experience this level of hell in this existence. And the deterioration of our health, it's only gotten worse. There's really no strong indicators as though that's going to shift around and get any better. So we must be more conscious of this, aware of this, and combat it so we can secure our health and our futures. All right. Unbelievable. Being braggadocious about Pfizer, doing big deals with them, braggadocious about warp speed to this day, tells us what? Are the demonic strongholds that severe? Is the propaganda that powerful? Is denial and fear that influential that we would continue down a path as a people, as a country, to our own detriment? We have more power than our government as a people, folks. We have more power as a collective than the world elites, than this synagogue of Satan and its stronghold over us, especially for putting our faith purely in God and cutting through a lot of those deceptive layers like we've dove into. The word chosen today, we are completely misunderstanding what that means in the Bible. Israel does not represent in the Bible. It's more so God's kingdom. than any arbitrary lines drawn on a map in 1948. We got to cut through those deceptions, folks. This man does really good. Let's go ahead and hear what he has to say on this topic, getting back into the health.
We were backstabbed by Albert Bourla and the Trump administration by inking
100%.
this $70 million deal to expand the mRNA empire of the criminal enterprise Pfizer. Remember what Pfizer has done in the past. They've had to pay up to 107 instances for criminal penalties and other sorts of fraudulent activities, right? So they have a long track record of criminal activity, of lying to the public, of all sorts of terrible things. And so this is just a slap in the face to the entire MAHA initiative. We do not want to see Albert Bourla in there shaking hands with President Trump. We were expecting accountability. We have not seen any of that. Now it appears accountability is completely off of the table. We were backstabbed by Albert Bourla and the Trump administration by inking this $70 million deal to expand the mRNA empire of the...
Agreed. I'm sitting here moving some cords around. I apologize. I need to give you my 100% devoted attention for the rest of this episode. I'm just frantically trying to ensure the lights don't go out. Seems like internet's been up this whole time, so we're not completely SOL. So let's just continue on. There's only a few more to go through here. This gentleman lays it out really beautifully. Dives into this airborne synthetic mRNA vaccinations. Folks, this is so crucial. Do we really need a politician to fill us in before we actually give this particular war tactic any credibility? We should ask ourselves, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with humanity? What's wrong with the masses? Because we know. In fact, quite on the contrary, I even recall all the lies. This administration, former administration, we know politicians historically are expert what? Liars. It's the only explanation to the flip-flopping. It's the only explanation as to them going into these positions time and time and time again, getting paid more than they should be, but there's the unexplainable when they're leaving these positions, millions upon million, like they're just incredibly wealthy. Tells us what? So, time to accept the reality, folks. Let's play this one. It's a little more lengthy, but it's worth listening to every second of it. By the way, if you don't want my horrific failures over here and my personal inputs, I need more interaction with you. I need to have more of you come on. Let's open real dialogue and discussion. I look forward to that futuristically. Does add to some complications and connections, things of that nature. However, but bring it. I'll even come to you. This is mobile after all. Oh, there was one last point. Let's just get into the information. I appreciate you all, folks.
Just will not entire country. When you've been assigned to vaccinate the population of an entire country, but there are some people who just will not get down with the program. People who, no matter what you say, what you do, or what incentive you put out there, just refuse to take the vaccine. Here in America, this represents somewhere between 19 to about 30% of the population, depending on how you do the numbers. And so, wouldn't it be nice if there was some way that the government could disseminate the vaccine quietly in a way that people wouldn't even realize that they were getting vaccinated? That way, you can achieve your goal with minimal resistance. Well, if that's what you were thinking, you're in luck, because scientists over at Yale University have just taken a giant step towards making such a thing reality. This paper right here that you can see up on your screen was published just 2 weeks ago by researchers over at Yale University. The paper is titled "Polymer Nanoparticles Deliver mRNA to the Lung for Mucosal Vaccination." And what these researchers over at Yale were able to achieve is to develop a new airborne method of delivery for mRNA vaccines. Here is specifically what they wrote in their summary. Quote, "An inhalable platform for mRNA therapeutics would enable minimally invasive and..."
Now, mind you, this was a couple years back. Now it's in fact being rolled out.
Lung-targeted delivery for a host of pulmonary diseases. Here, we report an inhalable polymer-based vehicle for delivery of therapeutic mRNAs to the lung. We optimized biodegradable nanoparticles for mRNA delivery. These nanoparticles achieved high transfection of mRNA throughout the lung, particularly in epithelial and antigen-presenting cells. We applied this technology to develop a mucosal vaccine for severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 and found that intranasal vaccination with spike protein encoding mRNA nanoparticles induced potent cellular and humoral adaptive immunity and protected susceptible mice from lethal viral challenge. Meaning, in plain English, that their experiment proved successful. They were able to vaccinate these mice using 2 doses administered through the nose of a vaccine which contained nanoparticles carrying the mRNA COVID vaccine. These mice were vaccinated without a single injection. And according to the researchers, this experiment showed that this new method of delivery was quote-unquote safe and effective, and they are now planning to test it in humans. Now, if you've been following the development of these aerosol-based vaccines, then you know that this Yale University study represents a significant leap forward in their development. In fact, it's a significant advance since scientists have had trouble creating lung-targeted mRNA therapies. Typically, these therapies have had poor transfection efficiency. That is, only a small fraction of administered nucleic acids make it into cells that lead to expression of the encoded protein. Also, in the past, the nanoparticles that deliver the mRNA have caused inflammation and other problems. The Saltzman group got around this hurdle in part by using a nanoparticle made from polyamine coester polyplexes, or PACE, a bicompatible and highly customizable polymer. Now, in the statement of theirs, they mentioned the Saltzman group, named after one of the lead researchers in this Yale study, Dr. Mark Saltzman. And here was how he explained the findings as well as their significance in a separate statement. Quote, "In the new report, there is no intramuscular injection. We just gave 2 doses, a prime and a boost, intranasally, and we got highly protective immune response. But we also found that, generally, you can deliver different kinds of mRNA. So it's not just good for a vaccine, but potentially also good for gene replacement therapy in diseases like cystic fibrosis and gene editing. We use the vaccine example to show that it works, but it opens the door to doing all these other kinds of interventions." Professor Saltzman then added that, quote, "This new method of delivery could radically change the way people are vaccinated," adding that it could make it easier to vaccinate people in remote areas or those who are afraid of needles. And indeed, if this technology were to develop further, well, you can just imagine the compliance factor. Because you might get a lot of people taking the vaccine if you make it a prerequisite for them to keep their jobs. But you will get 100% total compliance across the board if the vaccine is delivered through the air, since at the end of the day, every single person needs to hear the quote-unquote fact checkers dutifully typing away their critique of this episode by saying that the government has absolutely no plans to vaccinate the population through the air. That is just a conspiracy theory. And technically, they are correct. There are currently no plans in the books to somehow secretly vaccinate Americans through the use of aerosol mRNA-based vaccines.
Not anymore.
However, there are 2 very important things worth mentioning. The first is that there has long been a strain of thought among so-called biotechnologists that it's the moral thing to do to enhance people's biology in a covert way, since they might not agree to it. As an example of that train of thought, here's a paper that was published in 2019 titled "Compulsory Moral Bioenhancement Should Be Covert." And here was the summary from that paper. Quote, "Some theorists argue that moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory. I take this argument one step further, arguing that if moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory, then its administration ought to be covert rather than overt.
Wow.
That is to say that it is morally preferable for compulsory moral bioenhancement to be administered without the recipients knowing that they are receiving the enhancement. My argument,
Folks, this is on the NIH.
for this is that if moral bioenhancement ought to be compulsory, then its administration is a matter of public health, and for this reason should be governed by public health ethics. I argue that the covert administration of a compulsory moral bioenhancement program better conforms to public health ethics than does an overt compulsory program. In particular, a covert compulsory program promotes values such as liberty, utility, equality, and autonomy better than an overt program does. Now, I personally have a significantly different understanding of the word liberty than this author, but setting that aside, this demonstrates that there's already a strain of academic thought moving in this general direction. That's the first point. The second point is that this wouldn't even be the first time that the US federal government secretly administered biological agents through the air. For instance, back in the 1950s, in order to run a simulation of a biological attack, the US Navy conducted something known as Operation Sea Spray.
Right.
This was when they used airplanes to fly over the city of San Francisco and spray the population with large quantities of a bacteria known as Serratia marcescens. Now, at the time that the experiment was conducted, that particular bacteria was, according to mainstream science, considered harmless. But it actually wasn't. And as a result of their experiments, many people in San Francisco contracted pneumonia-like illness, with at least one person dying as a result. And just as a fun fact, the family of the person who died wound up suing the federal government for gross negligence, but that family actually lost the lawsuit because the federal judge ruled against them. And
let's really absorb that. Could you imagine being that family? What does that family know? They know how corrupt this country has become. Why are we tolerating that? To further allow that level of oppression and tyranny, we are not operating as a country as we were taught as children. Why are we accepting continuously the unacceptable? After all, we get what we get when we accept that. And we're continuously, on so many other matters, accepting the unacceptable. Why? We don't have to accept all this tyranny, oppression, from all these different angles and measures. We have far more power as a people, even individually, spiritually, when we cut through. This is entirely liberating. I get there is a level of grieving to the shift. Try to get this thing removed for a second. The shift it takes to believing in the construct generationally. Oh, always a Republican, right? In our households. I get there is grave challenge, and it's a big pill to swallow to at the true depth, the depth necessary. There's grieving. And look at all the steps of a true grieving process, right? Nilly-willy. There's frustration. There's disbelief. There's mourning. And now we got to figure out and understand, oh, wow. And I believe there's deniability to, well, frick, if we can't trust in everything, well, then the burden on so many of our shoulders. But that's living. That's life. We should welcome the burdens. We should be excited to carry what we can. That's accepting our role in life on life's terms and why we were put in this moment, in this time. What we can't afford is the continuum of deterioration, and now this level of weaponization taking place in our air. Let's finish this.
Operation Sea Spray was not alone. It was one of several dozen different programs wherein the US government secretly administered some form of biologic material onto its citizens, including the Tuskegee experiments, Operation Big Itch, Operation Dropkick, Operation Mayday, Operation Green Run, Operation
Wow. Today we are just riddled.
Using covert methods to
we are riddled with technical difficulties. Uncharacteristically so, or to a level we don't typically experience ever. Now, I know I'm in a new location, but I got an open skyline. There's no pine trees around me. So this seems very alarming and unorthodox, but I appreciate you bearing with me nonetheless. And please don't let this hinder the importance on sharing the message. And I get if this has too many disruptions at the end of the day, I'm going to clean things up. I'll show up better futuristically. However, all the links are provided below. Let just combine the most powerful ones you feel, get them out on all your social media platforms. Fear not. I can't wait for the biblical read. We're going to dive into fear and foolishness. Let's not be foolish, and let's fear not. There's only one healthy fear, and that is the fear of our loving Creator. That's the only healthy fear. Now, I used to struggle with fearing God. Like how there's 365 fear nots in the Bible, but then there was quite a few fearing God. Until I understood that's the only healthy fear there is. But that's a personal journey. I encourage you to go down that. No more interruptions. We'll finish this up.
Test what they believe is ultimately for the betterment of society. And so with that in mind, you take another look at the situation that we're currently finding ourselves in. You have a huge swath of the federal government, including the federal health agencies, who would do anything to vaccinate the population.
Right.
Going so far as to, over the past 3 years, literally make people unemployable if they fail to comply. Then, you then have these experiments over at Yale University, which are developing a new breed of mRNA vaccines, which can be administered through the air. You then have a strain of thought, of academic thought, being developed among so-called intellectuals, arguing that the administration of these types of quote-unquote moral bioenhancements should be done covertly in order to make them more equitable. And then, of course, you combine all that with the history that the U.S. government already has of using these covert operations, and then it's really not a stretch to imagine that if these aerosol vaccines do develop to the point of being viable at a large enough scale, they could theoretically be deployed without the American citizens being told about them.
Right.
They'd just be deployed for our own good. Now, of course, that is just speculation. There have thus far not been any politicians who have come out and said anything along this line.
It's no longer speculative, folks. They're doing it. And it's documented in multiple states right here in our country. And that's what we know. You think for a second we know it all? But he talks about how damning and so many others is to the mRNA tech. What's Trump doing praising Pfizer? There's no more excuses to be had. Folks, we must face the reality. If you need a shoulder to lean on, to cry on, I'm here. We must face the reality. Okay? Whatever it takes, get through it, push through it. Don't let fear and denial or the propaganda keep you from furthering that journey. Because at the end of the day, they're continuing these tactics. And do you believe as they continue these tactics, it's going to be easier to face the reality tomorrow? Or a month from now or a year from now as they continuously roll these out? No, it's going to be far harder. And we can make that same correlation to our freedoms. That it's much easier to fight for the freedoms you still have than fight for the ones you've lost. And that it goes hand in hand with our health. It is much easier to fight for the health we still have than the health we have lost. Because health encompasses brain function, the ability to wake up, production, get things done, organization, the whole nine. There's a reason why this administration is further speeding up this whole this new world order's plans as we speak. There's a reason why they were pedestaled and won over our hearts the way they did. And it's all deceptive. I know it's a hard one. This isn't a reality I was expecting or hoping for. I wanted this administration to be pro-team humanity. But The truth is the truth, and they're serving the same dang slave masters as the last. So was it bad for us to show up and get them in the seats that they've gotten? No, we now can see clearly than ever before. It's all a circus. It's all a show. And continuously, more than arguably any other administration, dividing we the people, the only solution we have to secure our own future, our own minds. It's already gone over longer than I've expected due to my rants, but right here, AeroVax is an mRNA vax that is not injected. It's inhaled through the air. Bill Gates, once again, is investing in this. And now people are concerned about it, as we should be. It's being done through the techniques they have rolled out through geoengineering, which Gates is also a part of, dimming out the sun, fighting global warming. No, that was the ruse. Because once again, at the end of the day, it isn't our carbon. It's not all these things they say it is. We have climate change irregardless. The fact of the matter is the human impact has been insignificant to the globe in the world as we know it. In fact, look no further, for example, than we have carbon generators in greenhouses. What does that do? Create CO2. Well, the plants respond in kind because it's plant food. So on the global scale, we have more cow farts, we have more human farts, we have more vehicle farts. The planet responds in kind. And when you look at the overall data regarding that, it's insignificant because carbon, for example, accounts for 0.04% of the world's atmosphere. That's insignificant. The human impact to that 0.04 is 0.3%. So it's insignificant measurements. If anything, the world would fare better if we even produced more carbon. It would. It'd be a greener planet. But as you play this, it's like you got to pause it on these screenshots. But if he can dim the sun, he could vax us from the sky. Bill Gates strikes again. Canada is now testing an inhaled mRNA COVID vaccine that doesn't require your consent. You just breathe it in. I'm going to have to read through these for those that are solely listening futuristically, so bear with me. Breaking news. This is from McMaster University, Brighter World. It's called AeroVax, developed in McMaster University with the funding from none other than Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and backed by $8 million in Canada. $8 million in Canada, taxpayer dollars. It's not injected, it's sprayed into your nose or potentially the air. Wow. What if they could vaccinate you without your permission? Aerosolized vaccines could target large populations without individual consent. And this is not sci-fi. It's in human trials right now. So Brighter World, wow, unbelievable. The university's own publications. Critics are raising the alarm. Dr. Joseph McCullough, RFK Jr., and others warned that this tech could be used to override bodily autonomy under the guise of public health. Did you consent? And guess who's behind it? Once again, Bill Gates, who also funds geoengineering experiments to spray particles into the sky under cooling the earth label. Once again, a deceptive tactic. If he can spray the sun, why not your lungs? And that's going to be way too hard to read on this screenshot. But there's a whole other article here. Aerovax used fetal cell lines from an aborted baby in 1970s, HEK 293, and targets your respiratory system, the most delicate tissue in your body. This tech is designed to enter uninvited. About Aerovax inhaled COVID vaccine trial. When a vaccine is inhaled, the body's immune system responds in a different way than when injected. That may be better at preventing infection. Interesting. Self-replicating mRNA is next. In the US, the FDA just fast-tracked replication vaccines that multiply inside your cells. Highly controversial, critics warn this could be used as a biological weapon, funded by, again, Bill Gates. Self-amplifying mRNA vaccines are the next generation bioweapon, yes. And look at the spike proteins. They are enhancing. Look at the $70 billion to this mRNA tech, to none other than the criminal organization we call Pfizer. Look at the $50 billion dealings with AstraZeneca, also speeding this up. Who's to say that they don't even get it? They could fine tune it to the point it's attached into the spike proteins where it's just now shedded from one individual to the other. That already has attributed to very negative impacts when it can span the whole gauntlet and spread the full-fledged. Once again, the more covertly, they didn't want to go to this method. They wanted us to voluntarily roll up our sleeves and take whatever they assigned us to inject directly into our body. Yeah, that's just a more direct. They already had the supply chains built out to complete that. But in doing what they did through the oppressive measures during the scam pandemic, luckily enough of us stood our ground, had the proper skeptical stance, and now blind trust has been obliterated. So now they are forced to go through more covert methods, because that other more impactful route we stood against and said no more. So this is incredibly alarming stuff, folks. Like, once again, we must abolish all the oppressive groups, corporate. And I keep seeing glitching. I'm going to have to run another test. But once again, I don't know if that cut out. But RFK was deleted over this, folks. It's time to learn the lesson. After all, it's our own function, our own health. Everything hinges on that. The very experience, whether it's enjoyable or hell on earth, hinges on our individual health. This is everything. And they're continuously pushing the envelope in this arena. Why? 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 This is happening without national debate, without long-term safety data, without your say. So we ask again, did you consent? And who's really making the rules? Great question. Do we get a vote? No. Demand transparency. Follow the money. Question who really rules. Great questions. Guys, we were warned. We didn't listen. So many individuals. Dr. Rima Labo, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, called the whole COVID pandemic perfectly. And this was done 15 years ago, folks. And we chalked up individuals like this like kooks because we couldn't grasp that reality. We didn't. They They didn't break trust enough with us to, and it's interesting. Some people, it's literally like the Matrix. They just rather stay blue pilled, even being offered the red pill. Well, that's not living at all. There's no other choice in my eyes. And as challenging as it may become, I believe it's only through the demonic ties that has us thinking that way. All the propaganda, the box we've been put in, all the deceptive layers. But when we entirely get through and we push through it all and we're done grieving, it is liberating. It is beautiful. It is exciting. And as a collective, it would be easily addressed. Give this a listen.
Flu, everybody around us.
Check this out.
States of America.
Yes, sir, I have.
Why?
I do not feel safe living in the United
Really?
States.
Do you want to come in and sit down?
No, sir, I'd rather not.
You'd rather just be here so you can make a fast
This is
exit if you
powerful.
As soon as you and I finish,
You're out
I'm
of here.
leaving the country again. Why?
doesn't feel
Because in a
safe here.
very short time, not today, not tomorrow, but very soon, we'll be facing compulsory vaccination under the mistaken term of voluntary vaccination.
Now, what is it about these vaccinations? You think that they're bad?
Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that the World Health Organization has decided that
Bing.
we have 90% too many people. The World Health Organization has been working since 1974 on vaccines to create permanent sterility.
It's not just
Doctor,
Bill
your
Gates.
response is going to be, you're crazy. How can you say this stuff?
They will induce a pandemic. You're going to get the flu. Everybody around us is going to get the flu. Then the United States government, based on their statements that they've already made, will say, oh my, we have a pandemic. What that means is a Holocaust, a genocidal Holocaust. Men and women will sicken and die, and those who survive will be infertile. Let me tell you a story. In 2003, I had a patient in my drug-free medical practice who was a head of state. And one day she said, you know, it's almost time for the great culling to begin.
The what?
That's what I said. The what? She said the great culling, C-U-L-L-I-N-G, when you thin the herd. I said, what are you talking about? She said, it's almost time for the useless eaters to be culled. And she said, those are the people who are consuming our non-renewable natural resources. I said, who are the people who...
How could you even gain that type of view regarding other people? That is demonic in nature, so it's strictly the satanic worshipers. It goes to show how much momentum evil has really gained since Adam into light, the offer the devil made to Jesus Christ himself, the world. It is clear other humans in the flesh have taken that offer and has actively gained the reins to everyone's demise. And we're accepting that. This is a few select demonic devil worshipers, and we believe in the superior being that spoke everything in existence, the loving creator, and we're fearful of addressing the evil to our betterment, our children's, our future, living more so in a land of abundance and harmony with everyone. More, I mean, there can't be perfect harmony, right? And things to that nature that just make up this existence and this flawed existence, right? But we could live in a land of abundance. And there's example after example, even biblically, of people very quickly, once they really face oppression and evil, that they very quickly fall into that. Gold's aplenty, all this stuff, and they're building out elaborate societies. To this day, we can't even, and this is where I believe the record keeping and the lack of transparency with Egypt and all these, the Mayans, all this unexplained. I mean, why delete all the giant bones, right? We knew giants walked this earth. There's over 1,000 historical records in the Americas alone since the reestablishing of this land. Thousands of newspaper articles from credible individuals. Where has all that been? And it's been wrapped up in that one type of museum and just not available, but they pedestal the dinosaur bones. Could it be to give more momentum to our societal over Darwin's theory versus the Bible reigning supreme and true itself? Oh, I believe so. The lack of transparency in this country is just tells us one thing. It's all criminal and a demonic enterprise. So I ask us again, why would God-fearing individuals fear that versus seizing the moment and what we could do in our own health? It's everything. Let's finish this, and I believe this is the last clip for the day. I appreciate you all. I love you all so much. I hope you understand personally why this means so much to me, and I care so deeply about your health, because I genuinely believe if we maintain a level of free speech and our health, we hold a chance of securing the future like we can't even fathom, falling into a level of normacy that we've entirely lost. We don't even know what normal function even is anymore.
Make this decision. She said, we, the aristocrats.
This person you talk to, you're bound because you're a physician and there's the relationship that you can't talk. Is this person a member of the Bilderbergs?
She is not Queen Beatrice. She is not the Queen of England. She is not Henry Kissinger. But she certainly presented herself as a member of that power elite, and she certainly was a head of state.
It is crystal clear, folks, that this administration and Donald Trump himself, no matter how he formulates the words, is not serving our country, is not serving we as a people. He's serving the elites, the synagogue of Satan itself, not Team Humanity. We can't excuse it away just on the warp speed, just on the health in and of itself. They're not doing the bare minimum yet again. If they were Team Humanity, Team Health, Team Maha, they would abolish the ability. They would follow the other 190 plus countries and abolish the pharmaceutical ability to even advertise. They would strip the vaccine and these corrupt criminal organizations of their immunity, full stop, at a bare minimum. They're not doing it because of why? And they're actually praising these criminal organizations and funneling like unfathomable amount of funds to speed up this culling that this lady warned us over 15 years ago of. Explain this. Explain how business and enterprise has shifted from all what's good and pure in this country, and it's now all feeding into the very corrupt things. Like, we are deteriorating so quickly, and every year it's even happening faster. They are effectively culling the herd.
New York Times just exposed the corruption of the U.S. healthcare economy, and I don't even think they realized it. They just published an article showing which industries employ the most Americans state by state. What's wild is this side-by-side comparison. In 1990, the map was...
Even our economy is representing this shift, folks. Relatively recently. And it's only getting worse.
Filled with manufacturing, retail, hospitality, and public sector jobs. Sure, obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, and cancer existed then, but they were nowhere near today's levels. Fast forward to today, and the entire country is blanketed in one color: healthcare. Hospitals, insurance giants, nursing homes, and outpatient clinics. Nearly every state's top employer is now in the sickness business. And since 1990, diabetes has doubled from 17 to 14%. Obesity has tripled from 11 to over 40%. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, colorectal cancer in young adults, and myocarditis were once rare. Now they're exploding, and 6 in 10 adults now have one chronic disease, with 4 in 10 living with 2 or more. Big pharma, big food, and a broken medical system created the perfect loop. Feed the people poison, get them sick, sell them the treatment with side effects, sell them more treatments, manage those side effects, hire more workers to manage the chaos, and call it economic growth. I don't know if this article was satire or pharmaceutical brainwash, but if you ask me, it's clear. We're not fixing the health crisis. We've just built our economy around it. New York Times.
Wow. Incredible. Well done. Folks, that's the bulk of it for today. But we must put a stop to these covert methods. I do not blindly entrust any of these institutions, and I believe as soon as they have the real ability to impact us the most greatly, if they could simultaneously release that and the ability for us to effectively assemble, it's going to happen. There's a level to this spiritual warfare where, hey, between Satan himself and God, like, that's their battle to be had, but we are being caught up in the crossfire. And the fact of the matter is, we could do a great many things to minimize the fallout and the collateral damage to our detriment, our pain and suffering, the loss of our littles. We shouldn't be sending our children to bleed on behalf of what the politicians start in this world. We're radicalizing by our actions terrorist cells. Look at what took place in Iraq. Now Hamas is becoming this greater and greater threat. But then again, we created it. And through our blind support, in fact, Israel created Hamas to begin with. When you really look into it, they funded it. They built it out. They allowed October 7th to happen, to continuously. So that's getting beside the health point. But for those that are struggling, really seeing the depths of corruption in Trump himself and this administration, once again, not to my pleasing. I didn't want to come to this conclusion, but I'm grateful we gave them the shot to see the bigger picture. But those that are still struggling with it, explain the Epstein cover-up. Explain the $23 billion, how arguably there's more the demonic Star of Ramphram, they call it the Star of David, hanging in our Congress, our Senate, our White House, more prevalent than our own flag. Explain that. Explain AIPAC, Mossad. Explain how we, supplied them, this administration alone, $23 billion in arms. Ethnic, like continuing an ethnic cleansing. It's interesting. It's like how they've preyed through propaganda on people's hearts. Of course, what we're told regarding the Holocaust, like we weep in our hearts, but how does that become victimized to an extent we're literally calling for an ethnic cleansing and a complete genocide and a carpet bombing, essentially, of a people? Too many of us are deceptively falling prey to, like, oh, how can your heart weep in this regard? And the sheer hypocrisy of just seeing schools bombed, all the schools, all the hospitals, women and children being sniped. So explain that away, Trumpers. I would say Trump-tards at this point. You can't. Explain the health moves that the war tactics being deployed as we speak regarding you and your own children's health. This is just more covert, more freakish. I would prefer the bombs falling because people would react more in kind to those methods than biological weaponry. But all they need is a matter of time. My dear brothers and sisters, I don't want you to fall prey to these tactics. I want you to maintain a level of your health, your sanity. We can't allow whatever disconnect is keeping us from facing the reality of the world, because it's in facing this reality that we can actually properly address it. And solely, it's the only way. So, we can no longer afford to turn a blind eye to these attacks. It leaves us lacking the most basic ability to even function, yet properly balance the scales. At this time, yet again, I am overplugging our affiliations, but that was a means to help you at a discount, vetting companies that are also on the front line. So it's a win for you, a win for them, a win for our country, and a win for this to continue. But if you care to see more of Unmuzzled Chat, or my, especially today, showing up with all my flaws and continue this type of work, consider a donation. Got a Buy Me a Coffee link, a Venmo, a Cash App. If you want to reach out to me privately, individually, you can unmuzzledchat@gmail.com. We can figure out. There's so much deception running rampant. More on that with churches. It's just interesting to me that so many are willing to fall for that deception, open their wallets, pay out to these mega churches as though that's tied to their salvation, more than direct people in their lives, people they know, relationships, warriors like this, or people on the corner that need it even more. That, I believe, is more pleasing in God's eyes than just nilly-willy to any mega church. That the majority of them, whatever. More on that in the future. Thank you for sticking around through all our technical difficulties in today's episode. I love you. I just had to sound the alarm on this, folks. We got to nip this one at the root, because trying to eradicate within our bodies as they're continuously ramping up. We're dogs chasing its tail. We're going to continuously be behind the curve, and it will lead to more deterioration on our end. And we must get more effective in fighting this. And if you got some great ideas on how, please reach out. So the Bible reads for the day: fear. Let this encourage you and stomp out fear. You can look up the 365 fear nots. I encourage you to do that, but just some for now. God will protect us. Genesis 15:1. God will not forget us. Genesis 46:3. We should fear God. There's the healthy one. Psalm 25:12. And if that irks you like it did formerly me, ask him to enlighten your heart. Why fear all these fear nots, but fear you? He'll answer. Christians do not need to fear anyone. Psalm 27:1. Why? What do you have to fear in sharing this message on all your social medias? You care what people might have to say about sounding the alarm on their health, if they'll find this controversial? Why are you walking in fear? Share this to the moon. Don't fear what people have to say. God strengthens us. Psalm 46:1-3. Do not need to fear darkness. We do not need, Jiminy Crickets, I could read. We do not need to fear darkness or violence. Psalm 91:5. That's the only glory there is to be had. Walking in that fearlessness We do not need to fear bad news. Psalm 112:7. This is good news. We have an opportunity. Let's seize it. Love drives away fear. 1 John 4:18. I have love in my heart for those that have been deceived through all this organic infrastructure that's influencing them. You can see the true demonic worshipers because they lack that love for us all. They view us as worthless, useless eaters. Come on. Foolishness. Let's not be foolish. Being foolish is lacking discernment. Job 5:2. That's a big one. Let's not lack discernment. Let's gain the proper discernment to accept the truth, the reality of the world and the life we live today. Fools do not acknowledge God. Psalm 14:1. Fools do not know God. Proverbs 1:7. Fools invite their own destruction. Proverbs 10:14. We're literally at the point we're not doing anything about it. We are inviting our own destruction. That is utter foolishness. Fools enjoy evil. Proverbs 10:23. It saddens my heart. Fools show their annoyance. Proverbs 12:16. Stay away from foolish people. Proverbs 14:7. The ones that are sticking out to this point, you are my people. I appreciate you. I love you. And I'm so grateful for you. You give me incredible amounts of strength to continuously show up, even to all the suppression and facing all these oppressive measures that is just utterly mind-blowing. A foolish person rejects discipline. Proverbs 15:5. Fools return to their folly. Proverbs 26:11. A foolish person gives into anger. I've been guilty. I've been foolish in that regard at times. I'm lucky and grateful to even acknowledge it so I can work on it. And I give thanks to God in full credibility. Proverbs 29:11. A foolish person is lazy. Could that be one of our excuses? Even more so than fear? That we're just too lazy? That's Ecclesiastes 4:5. The foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom. Interesting. 1 Corinthians 1:25. I don't view him as foolish at all, but it helps us in that regard kind of digest it better, doesn't it? Love y'all. Until next time, with great love, take care.